There are some who believe that life here is being monitored by beings in the distant universe. And there are people here on Earth who know this to be true. For centuries, people on Earth have experienced a troubling and persistent phenomenon. Many people have vivid memories of being abducted secretly against their will by seemingly non-human entities and undergoing complex psychological and physical experiments. A common misconception is that space is a quiet and desolate vacuum of emptiness. Space is, however, very active. Middlesex, England. Identical twins. Philip and Ronald lived with their grandparents on an unassuming road in the historic county of Middlesex. It was the summer of 1982. It seemed like a normal, sunny day. A slight breeze flew through the air. For 13-year-old Philip and Ronald, this seemingly normal day would be the beginning of a lifetime.
They lived in a big house and we were out in the back garden with our grandmother, my brother and myself. Our grandma was out and Philip, my brother Philip, contests that she's hanging out washing. I can't exactly remember if she's hanging out washing, but she was with us. We were fussing around her and their garden was long and narrow.
Now, in the garden, Philip is slowly spun around and angled, so he is facing the night sky. What he sees is unexplainable. What happened next would turn their world upside down. In the distance, over the rear fence, what looked like a silver balloon was rising.
So this was, to me, otherworldly.
As if by magic, the object was suspended in midair. It arched over the fence, hovering ominously. Suddenly, the mysterious object sped in the family's direction. As it flew closer and closer, the twins began to realize this was not like any balloon they had seen before. Firstly, it seemed to be flying along a direct trajectory, as if it was being controlled by an external or internal force. Although the object was only around the size of a football, its finish was that of a highly technological metal. As it came closer and closer, it halted, hovering silently over their grandmother's head.
Grandma, look, look. And she turned around and she said the most bizarre thing. She said, oh, look, the fairies have come to take a closer look at us. We realized at that point it wasn't the fairies and that she was trying to, calm us to the situation. This, to me and Philip, was technology. It was technology. As I said, it was spherical, the size of a football. It didn't make any noise, but the surface was rather soiled. So that could amount to the reflection.
Before they knew it, the object advanced towards the house, hanging around the second-floor windows. It then traversed quickly over the roof of the house and disappeared out of sight. The incident confused, intrigued, and scared the young boys.
It was haunting. It was like something from Doctor Who. And it just hung over our head, and it was watching us. And, in regard to a string or cord, there was nothing. Absolutely nothing.
And just as we started down the woods, well, it went up through the trees. Looked like a big cigar shape with light lit from both ends.
Tonight we have left the political arena for the arena where men's minds and imagination take over from established facts and provable theories. We're going to examine that unfathomable area of outer space.
Now, ridicule has been a very unfortunate factor in this thing. I know, but what it boils down to, that anybody reports one now, they'll say, you're crazy. Look what the Condon report said. Now, If we let the Conant report go unchallenged, we would be guilty of letting these people be victimized. And there are many people who have been badly hurt by official ridicule after sightings. The airline pilots today, most of them will not report a sighting publicly. And many pilots have told me that I wouldn't report one to the Air Force if the thing flew right in the cockpit. That because they cite the case of Captain Killian, who was very badly ridiculed and finally silenced by his airline. According to his wife, said he was pressured. They were pressured into it by the Air Force. Now that's hearsay, but the fact is the man since that time has never answered any questions. He will not go on TV, radio, and talk to reporters at all.
And then it seemed to just go together, make a ball, and fly out into that field, and it was a great big, huge yellow glow out there. And then there's another, and it come down, and it looked like big red wheels, like a wagon wheel.
They didn't realize it then, but this would be thought of as their first experience of alien contact.
So that's how it started.
It was a sighting of what we would call a UFO, an unidentified flying object.
It was quite small to be a UFO. It was, my brothers always said that it was an eye, rather like the Foo Fighters in World War II that were spotted.
In popular culture, the term UFO refers to suspected alien spacecraft. Although its definition encompasses any unexplained aerial phenomena. Reports of UFOs have been a constant throughout history. As far back as we can tell, humans have always observed the sky above them, noticing objects, lights, and movements that they can't explain. As our understanding of science has developed, these occurrences have become increasingly rare.
Cases that remain unidentified and that some people would say is an argument for there being an extraterrestrial explanation are very rare.
However, although many UFOs can now be easily identified, the mysteries that remain become even more intriguing.
It's an enigma. The UFO subject is an enigma. It's a puzzle. We can't solve it.
Most cases we get are misidentifications, the occasional hoax, aeroplanes, planets, you name it. And there is a small percentage that at the end of the day, no matter how hard you try, and I can be as skeptical as anyone, and I am, there still remains cases that are unidentified.
Philip and Ronald described the UFO. They saw that afternoon as a sort of Foo Fighter. This was the term used by World War II pilots to describe UFOs seen in the skies. The United States Air Force began to report the mysterious crafts in the early 1940s. Allied pilots flying over Europe would report glowing spherical objects flying alongside aircraft. They would glow orange, red, and green. They never showed up on radars and would outmaneuver sophisticated aircraft.
I have seen UFOs, and so I don't need persuading. I've seen these objects in the sky.
Are you looking for little green men or what?
No, no, not little green men or women.
I believe that the UFO phenomena and the crop circles are totally connected, and it's to reawaken an ancient knowledge that we've forgotten.
Some tried to explain these phenomena as being the result of hallucinations, or even top-secret German weapons. However, some are certain that the strange objects are, in fact, alien spacecraft.
But for the majority, they will pass it off as an explainable phenomena, atmospheric distortions, light refractions, secret technology. They will go through everything other than what it might possibly be.
The twins, Philip and Ronald, would both become ufologists, practitioners of the study of UFOs. However, Philip and Ronald's encounter with the silver orb wasn't the only unearthly encounter they have experienced. It instead signaled the beginning of a series of strange occurrences.
And it was until the period of 1989, the winter of 1989, where the full scale of this phenomena really dug into me. And I had what most people assume was an alien abduction.
Marston Morton, Bedfordshire, England. Marston Moor. Attain is a village in England. It was the winter of 1989. Philip and Ronald were now 20 years old. It had been 7 years since the incident in Middlesex. Although the UFO incident had a big impact on the twins, they found it easy to dismiss it as an isolated incident of childhood strangeness. However, in the space of 24 hours, how Philip and Ronald would see the world and the possibility of extraterrestrial visitors would change forever. Philip recalls walking from the station to his house. They lived on a cul-de-sac in a house with a frosted glass front door. The young man greeted the family dog, Benji. His twin brother and his sister were both at home, while their mother was at work.
I'm just, talking generally, got my back leaned against the cabinets in the kitchen so I could look out towards the hall and through the frosted glass doors to the front of the house.
In the kitchen, Philip began to notice a change in the atmosphere around him. It could only be described as a strange electrical feeling, a vibrational interference. He had no idea what was happening or what was about to happen. Following the change in atmosphere, Benji also began to react to something. His ears perked up before growling, eventually barking, perhaps using his heightened senses to detect a danger Philip could not yet see. Suddenly, Ronald froze and his head craned up to the ceiling. As if in a trance, he says.
There's going to be an earthquake or Grandma's going to die. Well, his statement made no sense to me. There was no earthquake and Grandma was still very much alive during that point.
The statement seemed to make no sense to Philip. It was like wires had been crossed in his twin brother's head. With Ronald still in a trance, an overwhelmingly bright light streamed through the frosted glass of the front door. The light saturated everything it touched. The door itself seemed to be altered by the impact of the light, as if the whole structure had somehow turned to jelly. It moved backwards and forwards in an unexplainable way.
Part of my mind thinking this is not possible, this is not happening. The same token, my brother is still in his trance, or if that's what it was, a trance. We don't know what it was. And I don't know what my sister had been doing to the far left, but remember this was happening in initially seconds.
At this point, Benji is barking hysterically. As the light gets brighter and brighter, Philip's attention is swiftly alerted to a force coming through the glass of the still closed door. The force manifests itself as a figure, a humanoid silhouette, standing no more than 3 feet tall, clad in all black, wearing what appeared to be an oversized helmet on its head. The atmospheric pressure increased to an unbearable peak as the figure suddenly shot into the boys' shared bedroom. Terrified, Philip grabbed the nearest knife, yelling that there is an intruder in the house. The thing, whatever it was, shot from the room across the hall and up the stairs where it disappeared. The moment it disappeared was like a plug being pulled from the socket. Ronald snapped out of his peculiar trance. The front door and the atmosphere returned to normal. The distressed family conducted a search of the house, but nothing was found.
We made a search of the property, nothing could be found, and I remembered that I broke down that night because I couldn't explain what had happened. The whole thing seemed unreal, but it really happened.
There was so much that couldn't be explained by science or even rationalized by the twins. What had Ronald's statement meant, and why did he say it?
My brother can't even begin to understand why he went into the trance that he did or why he came out with those random things.
How is it possible for something to move through solid matter? And what was that thing? Could this bizarre encounter be alien contact? Philip was understandably distressed by the events of the afternoon. This no longer felt like the UFO event of his childhood, that their grandmother could describe as the fairies coming to visit. The visitors were gradually feeling more and more insidious. It was later in the early hours of the morning that things would become even more unexplainable. Philip awoke to find himself hovering on his back. He was inexplicably in the hallway, suspended about 3 feet above the ground. He felt himself slowly pulled towards the kitchen, head first. Philip describes moving through the glass of the door. Just like the small figure before, somehow, solid matter has become malleable.
And my mind's thinking, that's not possible. How am I able to get through physical matter? I couldn't work out what was going on.
Philip couldn't move his body. He couldn't make any noise. He couldn't scream for help or escape. The force carried on moving his body through the conservatory and out to the garden.
I wasn't panicked. I was almost like, well, if there's something that's got a hold of me or taking control of me, then I'm just going to go with it.
There were what could be hundreds of UFOs littering the sky, moving quickly and unpredictably. One stationary gray, metallic spherical object commanded his attention. As Philip gazed at it, he could feel his body quickly moving up through the air and towards the sky.
And as I come towards it, come right up to it, I black out.
Slowly realizing his surroundings, Philip is horrified.
If you can put yourself in a situation where you don't know where you are, because I immediately woke up and I found myself in a kind of like a medical room. It was very hot. I was naked. I was strapped to some kind of bed.
Philip is trapped in an unknown medical setting. Unable to move, he stares, terrified at the 3 silhouettes that towered over him.
When I looked to my right, there were 3 tall beings that were kind of like enveloped in this mist. And for want of a better word, the only way I could describe them was that they looked like reptilians.
Reptilians are thought to be a species of humanoid aliens that have been reported in many alien abduction cases. Described as shape-shifting, scaled-skinned, and tall, it is thought that they can infiltrate human society through a sophisticated disguise.
Seeing them horrified me. One, because I'm strapped and I can't move. I'm being held against my will, and there are these 3 beings to my direct right that don't seem to have any care for me. To them, I feel like I'm just a piece of meat on a slab.
There was an indescribable feeling in his lower abdomen. He knew without even looking that some sort of foreign implement had been inserted. Philip describes it as having an organic feeling.
So I knew that whatever they were doing was something that my mind couldn't understand. And I started to yell and scream for them to take this thing out. I wanted this thing out. To me, it felt like rape. It was degradation and completely senseless.
Abductees consistently report undergoing forced psychological and physical medical procedures. The captors are often said to be interested in the human reproductive system. These procedures are usually called probing. Why are these aliens abducting innocent people? What do they want to gain from their bizarre procedures? Because of a lack of material evidence, what we know comes from human first-hand accounts of their time being abducted. From hearing stories like Philip's, believers have tried to piece together accounts to gain answers to their many questions.
Very horrifying. I mean, you know, people, they can laugh or joke about it, but to me it was one of the most life-changing events ever.
There are lots of theories about what the goal is of the aliens in their experiments.
The way that they go about the abduction process is covered under, darkness. Obviously, they don't want any form of interaction with us as humans. It's as if they want to keep their project silent.
My conclusion in that area is that there are, in fact, 5 different points of view that one can have towards this problem. One of these I would label as prejudiced. A second one I would label as being party line. A third one I would label as being skeptical, and by that I mean open-minded. A fourth one would be that point of view of the believer, and a fifth one is the point of view of the contactee. Contactee, the individual who operates on the assumption that it is possible to communicate with the occupants of flying saucers or UFOs or whatever you choose to call them.
Some abductees report incidents of interspecies breeding, leading people to theorize that a hybridization program could be at the heart of the abductions. Could it be possible that there is a goal for creating alien-human hybrids? This theory has led people to think about how there could be a danger of aliens wanting to colonize our home planet with a new, altered life form. Some even believe that the creation of all human life on Earth is the result of alien genetic experiments. Some people ask, is it possible that these visitors are simply as curious about us as we are about them? If there is a highly intelligent extraterrestrial life form, could they see these experiments the way that some humans view animal testing? It could definitely be seen as a possibility that the seemingly cruel procedures are viewed by the aliens as necessary for scientific advancement. If this species does, in fact, possess an incredibly advanced way of thinking, could we be seen as equivalent to test mice? Another phenomenon reported after the events of an alien abduction procedure is that of an implant inserted by the captors' claimed reasons for this range from tracking to mind control. On the spacecraft, Philip felt the device that was inserted into his lower abdomen to be extracted mechanically. The 3 figures that were present before had disappeared. He noticed a small figure coming through a partition of light. It is what he describes as a gray.
The believer is someone who accepts the idea that there are real UFOs and directs his attention to the question, why are they here? What are they doing? What do they want from us? What are their motivations? There is the assumption of intelligence or intelligent control, but not necessarily the assumption of direct communication between these intelligences and our own intelligence.
This grey came forward and the device was being extracted mechanically, I assumed. I didn't see anyone taking it out. It felt like it was being pulled out, and I was ordered to dress. So I kind of like thought, well, this thing's got me out of the situation or getting me out of it. I need to dress. So I dressed into my pajamas, and I was ordered to follow it down this slight corner where I couldn't see, and it turned out to be a corridor, a very small corridor. And it was quite misty still, and I could see some lights but couldn't see where the source of light was coming from. And the grey stopped at what I thought was a wall. And I looked at it and it looked at me, and immediately it wants me out. I have to go. And I'm like, well, how do you expect me to go? And immediately the wall opened to a door. I didn't see a door opening, it just turned into like nothing there, but I could see the village from a last height.
What Philip describes as greys is thought to be a species of alien. When we think of an alien, there is always going to be an image that comes to mind. More often than not, it is an image similar to that of a grey. They are described as humanoid gray-skinned beings with unusually large heads. They are said to have exaggerated, large, opaque, completely black eyes. Often, two types of greys are described, one smaller and one taller and more powerful. Because of the prevalence of greys in reports of sightings and abductions, they have become an iconic representation in media and culture. Greys were popularized by films such as Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And TV shows such as The X-Files.
No, not again!
I think the reality of this is something, perhaps why the system is keeping quiet, because of the horrific nature of how people will react to that reality. If the media stated on the news channels that UFOs are real and so too are aliens, how then are they going to explain about the procedures of abductions that occur? You know, oh, but what we haven't told you is that there are certain species called the greys that, you know, that come in the dead of night. They infiltrate through solid matter. They can abduct you. They can do experiments on you. They can screen your memory so you forget more times than not, and they'll put you back. You know, people aren't going to be able to handle that.
This alien species has become synonymous with abduction reports, leading skeptics to ask what came first and what are the lines between fact and fiction.
Now here on this map are pinpointed locations where some 30 saucers have been sighted and are still unexplained.
Item, June 24, 1947, between Chehalis and Yakima in the state of Washington, Private Pilot Kenneth Arnold sighted 9 saucer-like things flying like geese in a chain-like line. He estimated the speed of the saucers at 1,200 miles per hour.
Item, January 7, 1948, over Fort Knox, Kentucky. Captain Thomas Mantell and 2 other Air Force fighter pilots chased a strange object, like an ice cream cone with red on top, to 20,000 feet. Captain Mantell kept going while the others turned back. Captain Mantell's plane was found the next day, scattered over half a mile of farmland.
I feel that over a period of time, a couple of years now, that I have been in a position to look at some of the evidence, and certainly I have not seen all of the evidence that might be pertinent. I too have been driven in the direction of recognizing that there are cases that are not explainable in conventional terms. This at least leaves us with the existence of a real UFO. Beyond that, there is the question of whether some of these real UFOs may be under intelligent control. Again, At the present time, I would say that I have seen evidence that is readily interpretable in such terms, but which may also be susceptible of other interpretation.
Alan Dumas, an Air Force photographer stationed in Illinois, states that he saw something like this.
This is Alan Dumas. I was stationed at an Air Force base in Illinois as an Air Force photographer. On the afternoon of June 1st, 1951, I was very fortunate in taking a picture of an aerial object undoubtedly that of a flying saucer. The clear photograph shows a definite disc-shaped object, including a turret, at an altitude of 5,000 to 10,000 feet. The Air Force, at this time, declared that this was either a weather balloon or a conventional type airplane. However, I feel the photographs show definite proof that this object is not of familiar origin. It remained in view for about 25 seconds, and in that time, covering a large portion of the sky, and then it disappeared beyond the horizon.
A notable early description of grays in an abduction case comes from Barney and Betty Hill. It is often thought of as the first widely publicized alien abduction. The Hills lived in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, USA. They believed they were abducted by extraterrestrials. At 10:30 p.m. on September 19th, 1961, the Hills were driving back from a vacation at Niagara Falls. As Betty and Barney drove down a dark stretch of Highway 3, Betty claimed to have noticed a bright light in the sky. Betty first thought it was a shooting star. However, bizarrely, it only moved upwards. Furthermore, the light seemed to be moving around erratically. As the couple carried on driving, the lights seemed to be getting bigger and brighter. They stopped the car, and Betty exited to observe the lights through her binoculars. Through the binoculars, there seemed to be some sort of craft with flashing lights moving across the night sky. The couple got back into the car to taste the craft, to gain some answers to what they were seeing. Suddenly, the object started to fall from the sky rapidly. The Hills' cars screeched to a halt in the middle of the highway. The craft hovered as Barney grabbed the binoculars. He claimed to see 8 to 11 humanoid figures looking back at him from the windows of the craft. As the figures stared at Barney and Betty, a buzzing sound was noted. And the couple then reported entering a trance-like state. They would awaken 2 hours later, sitting in their car 56 kilometers away from where they had previously stopped with no idea of what had just happened. To add to their confusion, they soon discovered that their watches had stopped working. The strap on the binoculars had broken, and a pink powder substance had stained Betty's dress. Betty would go on to report unusually vivid dreams she had in the days and weeks that followed the supposed abduction. She dreamt of small humanoid men leading her up a ramp into a disc-shaped craft. To seek answers, the couple sought the help of a psychiatrist who used hypnosis on the two to try to find out what happened that night. During their hypnosis sessions, Barney and Betty's accounts were shocking. Similar to Betty's dreams, gray beings were sent to walk them up to a spacecraft. They were then examined in an unexplained medical setting. They removed all their clothes and took samples of their skin, hair, and nails. They described being probed with needles, with one large needle being inserted into Betty's stomach. Philip and the Hills abduction cases are a good example of a pattern many abductees and skeptics have noticed. First, the abductee will be captured by the aliens, like Philip. They could be levitated into a floating spacecraft. Next, abductees report the examination phase of the experience for Philip. This involves some sort of organic instrument inserted into his lower abdomen. The Hills describe similar examinations upon return to Earth. Often the abductee will experience missing time, leading to a realization that they believe that they have been abducted by aliens. Abductions are described as an extremely traumatic event, degrading and distressing. Many experience symptoms similar to that of post-traumatic stress disorder. To a believer in aliens, the similarities in many abduction cases suggest a sinister uniform procedure. It seems to be orchestrated for a purpose. Could it be complex genetic experiments that change the very meaning of being human? For skeptics, however, similarities in cases instead conclude the power of false memories, cases of sleep paralysis, and hoaxes. It is true that often when cases of alien abduction reach the media, they are met with scorn and ridicule. People can think these sorts of incidents belong strictly in the realm of science fiction. But for those who experienced it, it is no joke.
I am firmly convinced that such an explanation is not valid for all of them. It might be in few cases, but there is still remaining a solid block of very reliable, good observations which cannot be explained by such means.
You still hold to the fact that they are visitors from another planet, eh?
Yes, I do, definitely.
People laugh at you when you've been abducted by aliens, but it's not quite like that. The experience is very different. And I think when you've gone through something trauma-based, you know, you come out the other end and you're a survivor, it changes you. This is what's happened to me. Have I gone through some form of transformation? Yes, I think I have. And it's all due to wonderful people within the UFO community as well that's helped me understand that. So you find that you're not alone at all.
I agree with that, but I wouldn't say there's anger. You know, you hear sometimes these accounts of people are angry. There's no anger. It's just the mystery causes a burning desire to know more.
If these things that have been seen, Doctor, are visitors from another planet, why haven't they landed?
Oh, I have an explanation for that too. They might regularly land outside on oceans or in uninhabited parts of countries, but they might also not be ready to tell us.
Many alien abductee claimants are rightly wary of the media. In the case of Barney and Betty Hill, they avoided the media for years. Often experienced fears of these paranormal occurrences only go to the press, believing it might help them get answers for what they have gone through. However, this is rarely the case.
We were pulled into, the media circuit briefly after the experience. We didn't ask for it, and yet you're attacked by the general public, saying that you're just selling your books and you've concocted some fabricated fairy tale. Yeah. And so it's quite vicious. So I think that the way I view it, the way I see it, is that no, we're not special, we're all special, and we're all looking for our own truths, aren't we?
The field of ufology aims to answer questions not embraced by mainstream science. Many ufologists, like Philip and Ronald, have had direct experience regarding UFOs or alien contact. They feel like theories such as sleep paralysis or false memories can't even come close to explaining what they experienced.
The most difficult thing to deal with as a ufologist and paranormal investigator is, one, trying to deal with the reality of it, deciphering what is real and what is not real, although more times than not you get a feel of who is being genuine, especially with photographic photographic evidence or film footage and that type of thing. But also the other difficulty we have is ego, and it has to be said, because when you come into this field of investigations, you should have no ego. You leave your ego at the door, because there's a compassionate part deep inside you that changes you, where you want the truth and only the truth. Unfortunately, a lot of other people come into that arena and they want the glory. They want to be number one. They want to be the person that has all of the answers. But I think it's a shared process, like a group of people that all share together and unite together in celebrating that. In understanding that we are dealing with alternative forces that we can't yet explain, and working towards revealing that. So I think that's part of the difficulty that we have. Sensationalists, ego, and people who aren't truthful.
What feels most apparent when looking into alien abduction cases is their dedication to their search for the truth. Philip and Ronald still hope that one day they will find the answers to explain what they have been through.
I've been asked before, we both have been asked, why are you pursuing it? Well, you've been down the rabbit hole. So it's like you're not going to leave it later on in life. Earlier, it's funny, I didn't want anything to do with it. It wasn't forgotten, it was just buried at the back of the head. But when a little bit more of it came out, and the circumstances of meeting researchers, it drives you to want to try and find answers.
Yeah, and I think also that, by looking for that's an inward built mechanism that seems to take over, because the system is saying it's not real, it doesn't exist, and you're like, well, yes, it does, because I had the experience, so I need to go and look for it.
And if people tell you to leave it,
at this moment, in our All-American Airways plane, we're heading back toward the National Airport at an altitude of 5,000 feet. We're just above the haze line. There's about a three-quarter moon showing. It lights up the entire atmosphere with a rather eerie light, and you almost expect at any moment to see something unusual come out of the haze toward us.
the last UFOs that we had observed was on the 9th of April 2016 that occurred at 11:15 at night. That was witnessed by other people, and these 3 spherical white objects were stationary over our house. They were massive, but they'd been clocked by my niece on their way to us. They invoked some kind of shield or something to prevent the outside world or any influences from seeing them. Always when you're alone, isn't it? Or less few people, always. We haven't seen anything since then, but when you are in that situation of high strangeness, it changes everything, but it still hasn't answered anything for me, because I remember thinking, here we are again. There you are again. What are you trying to tell me? What do you want me to know? Why is everything secret? You see, this opens up other areas that were previously closed, and then it leads you down a corridor of more confusion. But I will say they are real, but not what we think they are.
Can alien abduction phenomena provide answers to the question, are we alone in the universe? The answer lies in exploring the skies and looking for more evidence of the strange, the mysterious, and the unexplained. We may never know the full agenda of the beings responsible for alien encounters. Further research is needed. Each new encounter, however, increases our understanding of alien agendas and prepares us for the day when we will have full disclosure.